Hello everyone, and a really warm welcome to another courageous conversation. My name is Pollyanna and I look after community engagement and strategy at Tree Sisters. And these courageous conversations are us bringing you the courage, wisdom and voices of the women who are in our network, and they're amazing women. And today I'm really excited to be speaking to Angharad Barlow, who I'll just read you a little of her bio so that you can find out some more about her while we wait for her to go live. Angharad is an artist, teacher and weaver of stories, beekeeper, bug lover and rewilder. Living on the wilds of Dartmoor in Devon in the UK, she's a community arts facilitator, exploring arts as activism, environmentalism, and as a vehicle for education. Working deeply with the magic and wisdom of the hive of the bees, trees, and the earth to become a voice for the voiceless. So I'm really thrilled to be speaking with Angharad, and I'm very excited to explore some of the work that she does and especially talk about the bees. So Angharad, if you can make a request to come on camera, I can let you on. So any of you who've watched A Courageous Conversation before will know that this business of going live sometimes has some technical issues, and we really appreciate your patience with us while we navigate those, if we should have any. And I wanted to say also that it takes real courage to come on one of these courageous conversations, because we have a big Facebook audience and it's sort of like stepping right out. So I salute the courage of Angharad for coming on today. So hopefully, Angharad, you can find the button to request to come on. And if you can't, in a moment I'll see if I can bring you on. So far it's not asking me. And if you're listening and you can hear cows, I am in the country and I'm hoping they'll be quiet for the conversation. Now let me just see if I can I bring you on, Angharad? Add. Excuse my finger. So I'm adding you and you need to say yes to the request.
Okay.
Oh, ah,
Hi. Okay.
It's always like a miracle when the guest for the conversation actually appears. So yeah, really, I really welcome you to this courageous conversation. And you're in a place that's really very cold and it's early in the morning, and I'm in a place that's really very hot and it's late in the afternoon. So it's quite amazing for us to be holding these two ends of the planet. I would really love it if you would share with us first why it is that you're a tree sister.
Okay. Well, I am a tree sister because I discovered that Tree Sisters really gave me a group of women that I was looking for that was really totally inclusive. That there wasn't any, what's the word? Everybody was welcome. I think that was the thing. Very often with women's groups, there can be cliques and they can feel like people aren't welcome, and I think with Tree Sisters it was completely the opposite. I just totally found a place where everybody was welcome and every woman was welcome, and it was genuinely about supporting each other, giving each other a hand up no matter what. And that filled a hole, really, I think, that I was missing. So that's how I came to Tree Sisters, really. I came to it through the inner journey, and through, well, actually, I'm not exactly sure how I ended up there. It was a very weird thing. I was aware of Tree Sisters. It's sort of been on the, I had friends that were, and it'd been on the sort of periphery of my life, around the edges, and kept seeing stuff about it, but I hadn't really engaged. And then somehow or another, I found myself in the inner journey when it first began. And I'm not totally sure how I got there, but it was quite an amazing experience, because I was seeing these posts and this sort of experiment that was happening around women supporting each other and this kind of inner map and journey. So I just sort of watched from the sidelines. I was really curious to see whether it was possible to have this group and this held space online in a kind of weird Facebook environment. And I found it kind of just kept popping up in my feed, and this incredible sharing and these incredible women. And I just, after a while, I was just found myself completely compelled by what was being shared, and and then I kind of went from observing to like, okay, now I want to dive in. I was just really compelled to really dive in and to join in and to be part of it. And that is how I came to Tree Sisters. So through that, I then learned more about what was happening, and being a restorer species and about giving back, and that was my route in.
Cool. Yeah, it is. It has been a really amazing space for sharing, even in the weird world of Facebook, hasn't it? It's like such a depth of sharing and intimacy that we've all created together in that inner journey group. So, what has being a tree sister given you?
Gosh, some really amazing friends. Actually, I've met some amazing women, and become friends in real life, not just in cyberspace. Um, and the experience of the map, of working with the map, has been really fascinating. It is very empowering, and also, really able to be doing the personal work and this kind of diving deep and on a daily basis, because very often we do this kind of inner journey work and we kind of remove ourselves or kind of take ourselves separate from real life and have to kind of go away and dive into our own stuff and come back into it. And what's been really great about the inner journey aspect of it is that you just have to, you're going about your daily life, and this is actually becomes part of every day, part of dropping into your stuff, part of sharing, and going about your daily business, really. And that's been an amazing tool, I think.
That's a really good point. Like that feels like something really pertinent, because you're right. We, like often if we're doing personal development work, we go away somewhere to a retreat or whatever, and it doesn't really bear any relationship to daily life. And there is something really potent about integrating that into the everyday and allowing yourself to blossom and activate and shine and all those things within the normal family life and work life and everything.
Yeah, it's really, and that kind of process of being in your shit and existing, and being able to a kind of toolkit and a network of people that you can go and go, oh, I'm having a really awful day, or this has really come up for me, and take yourself out for half an hour and go and connect with people and go and connect with women, receive some incredible wisdom, because that, let's face it, it's full of it in there. And even in the middle of the night, I found the amazing thing about it is the kind of global aspect, so that there really is somebody there, no matter what time of the day or night. I've often found myself 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, unable to sleep, or all this stuff going around, and you can go drop in to the inner journey page, and there is somebody there on the other side of the world, or it's that I found that really a really amazing thing too. Really
Yeah, it is very nourishing and very supportive. And I guess what we've found over the last year is that women who feel nourished and supported want to take action, and they find their courage and they take greater steps in their own community and where they are. So I'm really curious, in your bio, you talk about using arts for activism and giving a voice to the voiceless. And I would really love it if you could explain a little about what that actually looks like, and how courage comes into that for you.
Well, courage. As an artist, I think it really challenges your courage on a daily basis, really, because it makes you very vulnerable. You have to really, it's putting yourself out there, putting your ideas out there, but particularly um, when you're working with topics that you're really passionate about, that you really believe in. It's like, okay, I'm putting my heart and soul on the plate or on the, out there. And that's quite difficult. You teeter in and out of it. It's very hard not to take it all as some kind of real personal thing. Um, so I find that, well, to me, art is what we're missing, that creative aspect. We're all desperately in need of reconnecting to creativity, because reconnecting to creativity is reconnecting to nature, is reconnecting to the earth. They are one and the same thing, and we've been conditioned away from the earth and away from nature and away from creativity right from the time that we start school. It's not valued. I mean, I was lucky because I come from a family of artists, so it totally was valued. It's just what you all did. But it's not.
How wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. It was very normal. And it is normal for kids to be colouring and doing a bit of art and making some stuff out of it. But very quickly, by secondary school, it's not. You don't waste your time doing art and creating, and
That's
that's
so
really,
true.
yeah, and it's really sad. And that is, I think, fundamental to us as, humans are unique in their creativity, in this capacity to create on an incredible scale and on an good and bad and an incredible destruction. And I think we only have to look at our cultures to see how starved we are of and in need of creativity by the way that we idolize musicians and films and pop stars, and we have this incredible thirst for magic and other and the sort of unknown and inherent aspect of ourselves. We're desperate for it, and therefore I think for me it's a missing link for people in mental health. It makes you feel better. There's nothing. Everything creative is a benefit, whether it's moving your body, whether it's creating some art, whether it, whatever it is. It creates this flow and this incredible movement through you, which makes you feel good and is fun. And
Yeah.
so to me, it's the kind of tool for connecting people. So art as activism, it is a way of speaking to people and communicating that is really relevant for today. We live in a very visual society. People have got very short attention span. They want to see stuff. They want to hear it. They don't want to read for hours of tomes. It's this sort of 3-second clip mentality. And I think that art and music and dance can really speak to that. We can really utilize this kind of contemporary tool set to create change and to create activism. So people don't want to read massive data about the bees, for example. I do, but I can create a piece of art, or I can translate that into something, a kind of bite-sized piece that everyone else can relate to and can
Yeah.
see. And I think that is where activism, it's going to play a fundamental part in activism on education and communication with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Because art has a, like, it's so possible to convey a concept really rapidly with a visual, where it might take you 17 pages to explain it if you had to write it down or if you had to speak it. So, and it's true what you say about how squashed that is in our culture. Like my second son, who's now almost 16, told me last year that he wasn't going to continue on with art, even though he's a wonderful artist, because it wasn't going to get him anywhere in the world that we live in. And I cried. I
Mm.
cried because he was creating beauty, and in the school system it's not valued. And I wonder what you think then about the squashing of creativity and how that relates to the feminine?
Well, I mean, the creative juices that stem from nature, stem from the earth, you know, it is a sort of inherent connection to the feminine, and therefore a sort of a feminine flow of it, whilst of course creativity is not simply feminine. But we have traditionally associated it with it. But also I think that women have, creativity has definitely historically been squished out of women and written out. You know, we don't have to look very far back to see that there were not very many famous women artists until, you know, it's only very recent, and it's still a battle in the art world, you know, to have women exhibiting. You know, they have been sort of written out for quite a while. So there feels like an even bigger battle, and an even bigger step to take. Or, I mean, perhaps not for this generation now that are coming. Perhaps, you know, everything is changing, and that's really exciting. But we don't have to look very far back. You know, even as far as my mum, you know, you weren't encouraged to create. You know, so I think that you know, you were encouraged to stay home and get married and have kids and do that. So I think it's taken a big chunk out of our recent history, and that there's a bit of a struggle back to it, I think.
Yeah, and so what is the bridge back to that? Like, what's the bridge back to us, you know, refinding that creativity, and how then do you see that helping in terms of, you know, our world and bringing nature back into balance and regreening and
Yeah,
having a thriving planet?
I think for me, one of the things that's quite key in all of it is about having fun. We, you know, this is supposed to be fun. Life is supposed to be fun. Yeah, it's supposed to be joyful, and you know, that sort of childlike essence of joy and wonder, and the really easy ability to connect to the wonder of, to the bugs and the trees and what have you. And I think that we, to inherently, we consider art often, or creativity, quite childish, whether it, you know, it's play. And I think that that's really important. You know, we've become very disconnected from that beauty, play, that kind of nature, about that childlike nature of ourselves. Um, and I think also with art and creativity is that you tend to stop only for a minute now, but people, you stop and listen, you stop and watch, and you stop and you connect for a minute. And therefore, if you are connecting to a piece about nature, it it's like it gives you a bridge, because a lot of people haven't got this incredible wilderness on their back door like I have, you know, and don't have access to it, and are in a city, you know, where you might, one of the few things that you might see is a tree, which is also where I think trees come into it as a quite a as a really important connection point. Um, but you know, you don't have a lot of other bits of green and bits of nature that you connect to. Um, and I just think that if we can make creativity accessible again, that, you know, it started a few years ago with a trend of colouring books, you know, and I thought that was a brilliant thing, because it became, people sort of suddenly, where adults would sit and colour in a sort of meditative way for a minute, but that got a pen and paper back in people's hands, and became a step forward. And I think, you know, we've got a long way to go with connecting the masses to the earth. in particularly people that live in large cities that are very caught up in that rat race. And yeah, it feels to me that that art creativity can be a bridge, because you can go into the city with art, you can cover the walls with art, you can have somebody playing music in the street and or dance movement, and it can't fail to connect, even if it's for a moment. And if people are showing pictures of nature and showing pictures of destruction, or the it's even in that sort of subliminal, deeper conscious connection that it will go in. But when people aren't being exposed to it, if you're not exposed to nature, you're not exposed to the earth, how do you reconnect? So I think providing sort of visual and stimulation around that is really help people to it just filter into that subconscious being, that subconscious level of you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to think about. And I think often art and music and things can go in and affect you without the conscious mind even really getting involved. Like you might pass a painting and look at it briefly and not think any more about it, yet that image is within you and being digested. I'd really love to talk about the bees, and about rewilding, and how you came to be so passionate about the bees and what you're doing with the bees.
Oh, my favorite subject. I go on for hours. You have to shut me up when I start on about the bees. I found this great t-shirt the other day and I thought it was perfect. It was a picture of a bee and it said on it, "I hear what you're saying, but I just want to talk about bees." And I thought I like a bee bore or bug bore. I always aware that once I get off on it, I'm like, oh.
Oh, well, I wanted to ask you about something specific, seeing as you have this vast wealth of knowledge. When you I don't know where you were talking about it, but you happened to mention somewhere that bees actually belonged in trees, and somehow it had never even occurred to me that bees belonged anywhere other than in beehives that we'd made. I don't know why, because I read Winnie the Pooh as a child, and Pooh Bear climbs up an enormous tree to get at the bees. So it's obvious,
Yeah,
bees live in trees, but somehow that's gone out of our general
totally.
awareness.
And I think
Yeah.
that's I think fundamentally one of the problems is that bees live in trees and live in cavities. But there is this incredibly important symbiotic relationship with the tree and the bees, with the fungus that's in there. There would be usually in often decaying spaces within a tree. So is fungus. There are other microorganisms that live in there, that bacteria, little bugs, and there has been, well, let's face it, the bees have been here since prehistoric times. They weren't living in boxes on the ground. We've done that in the last 100 years or what have you. Yes, ancient civilizations have kept bees in small quantities, but not like we do today. This ridiculous and quite hideous culture of farming them, essentially. And so getting bees back in the trees is essential for the bee health and getting bees back in their natural environment.
And
We have,
it's very controversial as well, isn't it?
well, there is a bit of there is some disagreement on how, let's find the right words for it. There is a school of thought that has been dominating beekeeping being the word, which is kind of weird because you don't have like ant keeping or other kinds of bug keeping. But anyway, we have, because there's some kind of commodity to the bees, we keep them and farm them. But there is a standard belief. You're not the first person to say, "Wow, I didn't realize bees came from trees." I hear even from beekeepers that the bees won't survive without us, that, they won't survive if they're not in a hive and what have you. And I've heard that a lot this year. And it's just like, oh. But they do, we know there's a big problem with the bees. we know there's a huge problem with pollinators as a whole, and we're losing them, and the bees have been in dire straits for quite a long time. And in order to let the bees become healthy again, is that we need to leave them alone. We need to put them back in their natural environments, which is in a tree or a similar thing. We have been cutting down a lot of trees so that the natural habitat and old trees, particularly, we cut them down. They're dangerous. We take them out. There is a lack of natural space for them to be in. But in order for the bees to become healthy again, we need to rewild them in some degree or another. It doesn't mean we can't ever keep bees, or there can't be some relationship with humans and working with bees, but if we need the majority, or at least a huge part of the bee population to be allowed to be rewilded, we need to let nature do. They know what they're doing. The science is now coming out to back it all up, and that actually, if you keep bees, the distance apart, basically, the science is now learning to kind of mimic what they would have done naturally. And therefore, if you let them do their own thing, they become strong and healthy again. They actually, there would be these little bugs that lived in the beehives with them that would eat the mites and things, but we've sterilized it all, the environment. We don't have them anymore. We don't even have them in this country anymore. That these kind of symbiotic relationships.
The mites, you mean? The mites
Well,
that
not
are
the
in
good ones.
symbiosis. Right.
We have the bad ones, which we have a big problem with, but which we've created because we treat the bees with chemicals to kill off the mites, but of course it only kills off the weak ones, and therefore they're then just breeding from the strong ones. I mean,
yeah,
to me,
and so
it would seem common sense, but
do bees like to live in particular trees? Like, I feel like there's this whole world that you're in contact with that I have no concept around. Okay, so bees live in trees. What sort of trees do they like to live in? Like, where do they like to build their hives?
well, I don't think we know now, because there are wild colonies. There are wild colonies around where I live, which often get a bad reputation. They're considered to be the ones that spread disease and the ones that the pariahs, when actually science is now proving that's not the case. But they are not liked often by beekeepers because they think they're spreading disease to their hives. I don't think we know. They like particular cavity sizes, but then we do get bees more often in houses these days because we don't have lots of tree cavities. We'll find you get them in houses and in roof cavities and that kind of thing. But I don't think that we know what kind of trees they like best now. There is this really amazing movement towards log hives. There are people now building log hives and creating mimicking their natural environment and putting these log hives back in the trees. I mean, they're amazing. But this has only really been in the last few years. So we'll see, basically. It'll be interesting. There's different types of hives being made, lots of people experimenting with using different woods, putting them up in the trees. There's particular heights in the tree. The bees like to be up high. They're not naturally on the ground because they need to keep their temperature regular. They need to keep humidity and those sorts of things. So that's why a tree, high up in a tree, for 3 meters up, is ideal. So
Yeah.
it's relatively new in the fact it's a movement, which actually saying it sounds a bit ridiculous that we're kind of creating a new movement of putting bees in logs, which is when
There's something really ironic about it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is. I mean, there are still tree beekeeping traditions in Europe, Poland, and various countries that have kept bees in live trees, which is quite interesting. That they build platforms up high, or they will hollow out a cavity in a tree. but it's definitely not the norm. But it is essential to put the bees back in the trees and to kind of rejoin that relationship feels fundamental to me. I think in health for them, health for us, health for the planet. I think it's yeah.
And I would really love to know what it is about bees that has so fired your passion, that's captivated you so strongly.
Wow. That where to begin? I like. I've always loved bugs. I've always had a love of bugs and of nature, and but of the small, the details that the kind of microcosm that we ignore. And I've always been fascinated by that, and that there's so much to learn when you look closely at nature, whether it's the patterns or behavior, and we don't even see them most of the time. And I've always been fascinated with that. And actually, I found some book from when I was 5 years old. My mum gave to me recently, which actually had a piece of writing in about the bees in a beehive, and I had no recollection of doing it. So clearly, I was connecting with them then. But they are, to me, so magical on so many levels. We know so little about them. We can learn so much from them. They are, to me, because I will work with bee medicine, the wisdom that is accessible by working with the bees, not just as a hands-on as a beekeeper or as a bee guardian, but on a kind of more esoteric level, is just the most incredible thing. I have learned and learn so much. I mean, they hold a lot of wisdom around the feminine and around nature and our reconnection. Inherently the structure of a hive is matriarchal. There is a lot. I mean, there are the drones and the males in there, which are this incredibly beautiful fundamental part. But there is a lot that they can teach us about our humanity and about us as actually as peoples. Peoples. I'm not sure that's the right term, but we think of them as an insect, and individually they are an insect, but collectively they are something else. Collectively they are an organism, they are a body. The hive as a whole works in this incredible infrastructure, like a body, like a womb, like there is all the different substances that are made through this alchemical system of the bee. Everything that the bee makes passes through its body. So whether it's honey, whether it's wax, whether it's propolis, whether it's all these medicinal substances it makes within the hive, pass through this container of its body or through several bodies. And it's just, yeah.
That's amazing. I can't remember. In this moment, I'm trying to remember what the term is for the alchemical. Is it it's crucible. So a bee is a crucible, essentially. That it's and I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's magic. I mean, what it produces that now medicine is coming back to, but we know that honey is incredibly medicinal. Hospitals use it in dressings. Doctors are prescribing it, but honey is only possible because the bees they collect. It goes into a honey stomach, so it goes into this honey stomach in the bees, and then it is passed through its mouth and its proboscis to another bee, and then it's put in a wax comb, and the mixing of the saliva, the mixing of the microbes within its honey stomach is this sort of alchemical process. And then they deposit it in a wax in a cell, and then they fan off the water. So when you're hearing this hum from the hive, a lot of they're fanning off the liquid to make the thick, rich honey out of it.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just one substance. It's when you get onto wax, yeah, they
It's totally blowing my mind.
Well, this is what I mean, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.
I know. This is just what we could talk about in 10 minutes, but what it's also doing is, as a tree sister, I'm pretty focused on trees and reforestation. And I guess what this conversation is doing for me is bringing in this whole other layer of reforestation, which is about, like if I think about habitat here, I'm thinking about koalas and all the various different birds and stuff. And I don't know that I'd ever dropped into, well, trees are also habitat for bees and other pollinators and any colossal number of insects and bugs that need the forest to do their business. And so I'm really grateful to you for sharing your passion for the bees, because it's given me this whole extra layer of I suppose importance of our global forests, and the idea of rewilding bees and giving them back their home is just something about it makes my heart smile. So yeah, thank you.
I think it's such a, if we can, there's many sayings now that, if the bees go, we go. So I think there's something really rather lovely about if we can rewild the bees, then we can rewild ourselves. The bees are the bottom of our food chain. Fundamentally, we do need them to survive. And if we can rewild them, stop feeding them sugar, cover them in pesticides, all the things that we do to ourselves, then maybe we can turn this all around. And if reforestation is also fundamental for the bigger picture, but trees are fundamental for the smaller picture. We need them for the pollinators. Even plant a tree in your back garden. It doesn't.
It's beforestation.
Yep.
Sorry, this whole comment. There's something about bees, and I'm sure it comes from my childhood and Christopher Robin and Pooh Bear and Bees and Honey, that it feels playful, it feels magical, it feels like even this conversation creates a reconnection to the delight that's in nature and the delight in how amazing the world is. Like, just to hear you say there's a honey stomach in a bee makes me kind of go, oh, that's just so magical. So I'm just a bit conscious about the time. So we'll wrap up in a moment. But I would really love it if there was some message that you could offer to anyone who was thinking about joining Tree Sisters. What would that be?
I think that Tree Sisters and the trees, the combination of trees and sisters, has the capacity to really connect us on a real life level as well as a global level. We all can be in terrible panic and stress about the dire state of what's going on and be wanting to do something, whether we're able from our life or not. And I found that Tree Sisters has really enables that, to give back in so many different ways. You financially, so that that you're giving your whatever you can afford monthly to reforestation, to really helping on a global scale, but also this reconnection with other women, with other women, but with other people, and the capacity to connect in real life with. There are groves. I have met incredible women through it. I've made friends. I just had lunch with one yesterday. And that are just really on the same page, who really are caring and wanting to do it, and it just provides this incredible network that enables all of us to have that. There's no, you've got to have a lot of money, you've got to be, it doesn't, the inner journey, when I joined, it doesn't cost anything. And at the time, every now and again, I would donate some money to Tree Sisters when I could afford to. And then over time, I give a monthly donation. But it's, there's no conditions. All are welcome, and I feel like that is something that's really important for people to realize, that you don't have to be, you don't have to have, you don't have to do. You can just join.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And if anybody watching would love to join us, please go to treesisters.org and find out all about our work and donate for the trees and join the inner journey and all the other wonderful things that we have on offer. And thank you so much, Angharad, for sharing your bee wisdom and your creativity wisdom. It's really been such a pleasure and so fascinating. And I'm forevermore going to think about deforestation with reforestation.
Brilliant. Job done.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And to everyone else, we will be we're taking a break over the holidays from Courageous Conversations, and Samuel will be back on the 9th of January. So do come around for that, and please share this far and wide if you enjoyed it, because there's some wonderful pieces of wisdom in here that I really I'd love to talk to you for hours, but that we can't do that. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Angharad, and
Thank
we will
you,
see you
Pollyanna.
again really soon. Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.